Welcome to OnTargetHTML5.com. This is Mike King, your host and your instructor. And in this tutorial, we're actually going to build, using the CSS3 transition property, a slide-out transition for a group of photos. So let's go ahead and look at our completed project. I'm going to go ahead and drop out of the presentation, get into our development environment, and bring up my browser. And this is what we're going to build in this tutorial series. We're going to put these three photographs inside of our HTML, and then we're going to build a transition that allows you to slide out the image, and underneath the image you can actually have text that pertains to that photo. When you hover over it, the photo slides out. When you leave it, the photo comes back. And again, you'll have text that pertains to the photo underneath that image. And you can set these images up any way you want inside your HTML structure, and that one transition property will work for all of them. And I'm also going to discuss and explain to you how you can actually change the transition from going to the upper right, if you wanted to change it to go right, to go up, to go left, to go down. I'll explain the settings and properties on that transition property and actually get it to do that. So I look forward to seeing you in the tutorial. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and open up my text editor. I'll be using Sublime Text for this demonstration. And my browser is going to be Google Chrome. And I actually have my start files already loaded in the browser, start.html. And this is what I have for my starting file. This is a boilerplate HTML5 template. Just got my doc type, my HTML head with the attribute of English for language. Inside my head section, I've got my metadata for my viewport, and then again, that's just to make it mobile friendly. I've got my title. I've got a link to the style sheet that we'll be creating. Close my head tag, open up my body tag, and then close my HTML tag. And it's, again, standard HTML5 template, or boilerplate is what we like to call them. And my style.css file has nothing in it. It is in its own folder called CSS. You can actually see that. By the way, I've got it linked inside my start.html file. I actually link it to the CSS folder. And I've got an images file with 4 images in it. And these images are merely 300 by 200 pixel images that I decided to use for my demonstration. I'm actually going to use them for a few of the demonstrations that are coming up. Again, you're going to want a set of images. If they're not 300 by 200, again, you can set the adjustments. I'll show you when we're putting in the CS where that stuff goes. But you'll want to have a set of images that you can use. Great time for you to pause if you need to build your HTML5 boiler template. And again, that's what we're going to start with. And the same thing, if you want to go ahead and create that CSS file, I've got mine named styles.css. And again, I've got nothing in it yet, but you'll want a styles.css file or whatever you want to name it. Just make sure that you link to it. All right, so I'm going to assume that you're with me now as far as having that starting template. With all the changes that have occurred in CSS3 over the last few years, there are numerous things that we can do to make our sites more interesting. And that's one of the things that kind of disappoints me. I've been looking at a lot of sites, and especially from a lot of good web developers, and they really just haven't brought their sites up to speed with what's available. Adding interesting and attention-grabbing interactions is just one of those many changes. The ability to use CSS to add animations and transitions through relatively new is growing rapidly in support among the browsers or rendering engines, as we geeks like to refer to them. I mean, this is growing pretty quickly. There's a lot of things that we can do now in CSS that we had to use JavaScript to do just a couple of years ago. And now we can do it strictly in CSS, keeping our overhead low, keeping our server access low, keeping our request access low. So, I mean, we should be using that. The ability to add these types of interactions is relatively new without the use of JavaScript. But now we can do many of these by simply properly incorporating the new CSS properties. I must say there's still some older browsers that we do not support the newer features in HTML and CSS. And that's sad because a lot of the browser engines just aren't catching up the rendering engines. And after many years of doing our best as web developers to support those older browsers and the groups that use them, most of the web developer community now has come to the conclusion that if they're not going to upgrade, I mean, we just need to stop writing to them. I mean, that's just being fair and honest. I mean, come on. The damn browser updates are free. If you don't want to take the update, then just don't expect to see the newest technologies on your browser. In this tutorial, I'm going to demonstrate how we can have an image fly off the page to reveal text or captions underneath the image. It's going to be a fun tutorial. I hope you enjoy it. I've been doing a lot of work with the transitions properties in CSS3, a lot of work with Flexbox. In fact, I have some really new tutorials on Flexbox on my website. You got to check it out. It's one of the newer features in CSS3. Very, very cool. Anyway, let's build our HTML structure. So inside of our start file, I'm going to go ahead and add a section. So I'm going to come right inside that body, and I'm going to add an open and closing section tag with an ID of container. And then I'm going to come down a few lines and close out that section tag. Then what I want to do is inside my section, I'm just going to go put an H2 heading. So I'm going to come down inside the section. I am going to put in an H2 heading, slide out effect. And again, it's just labeling what we're doing. Then I'm going to open up a UL, an unordered list. So right after my H2 heading, I'm going to come down and open up an unordered list. I'm going to give it a class of slide out and a class of effect. Because when we start getting into our CSS, we're going to be needing both those classes. Right below that, I'm going to open up my first LI. Actually, let's go ahead and close that UL first. Come down a little bit below that and close out my UL tag. I'm going to close out that section. There we go. Now I'm going to open up an LI right inside my UL. So we're going to give our first list item. And inside that first list item, I'm actually going to place an H3. And these H3s are where our titles are going to go that we want displayed on that text that's actually behind our picture or our graphic, whatever you're going to use. I'm just going to call my first title is going to be lookout point. Then right below that, I'm going to put a paragraph of text that can actually go in about that image. So the text that pertains to the photo image, based on the size of the image, determines how much text you can use. In other words, depending upon how much screen real estate you're taking for this image, will determine how big your paragraph can be. It can be much more than this based on the 200 by or 300 by 200 base pixels or images that I'm using. Then I'm going to come down and close out that LI. So I'm going to close out that LI, and right below that I'm going to open up another LI. And this LI is actually going to contain my image. I'm going to go copy this so you don't have to watch me type it. So I'm going to come right inside that LI. I'm going to paste in my image. And again, I'm going to give that a class of slide. Then I'm going to go to the source to my images file. I actually have an images folder in my start files. I hope you got your images together. And then I've got my alt text. Always, best practice, put alt text in all the images that you put on your site. Then I'm going to go ahead and remove a lot of these blank lines because for now, this is all we're going to put in our HTML. I'm going to add some more images, but first I want to get our CSS in. So I'm going to go ahead and save all these changes. I want to go into the browser. There should be nothing here that you're not familiar with. This is all basic HTML. I'm going to go into the browser, refresh the browser window, and you can see now we've got our titles, our bullet points, our image. So everything seems to be working as it should. So now what I want to do is I'm going to go in and start putting in or adding our CSS. All right, so let's get in there and start putting together our styles.css file so we can actually start styling the content that we put into our HTML page. I'm going to open up the styles.css file. The first thing I want to do is go ahead and add a note or a comment to the top of the file. I tended to do this on all my files so I remember what they were for when I come back in 6 or 7 months. And then I want to go ahead and zero out my paddings and margins for this particular, or actually for all the rendering engines. So I'm just going to use my wildcard symbol, star, open and close my curly braces, margin 0, padding 0, and that zeroes out all the preset paddings or margins that are in that particular rendering engine. Then I'm going to go ahead and do my alignments and my setup for my H2, which is the heading on my page. Come down right below that and put in my H2 text align center, margin bottom 20 pixels, and that's just to give me a little bit of space between my heading and that first image. And then I'm going to set up my UL, my unordered list. So I'm going to come right down below that H2 and set up the UL with a margin of 0, auto. Actually, I thought I pulled that out. List style type of none. And this is going to center that UL on the page. I'm going to go ahead and save all those changes, refresh my browser window, and we're starting to see a little bit of change now in our document as we start doing our stylings. Great time to pause if you need to get that put in. Next thing I want to do is add my container. So the styling for my container, I am going to come down right below the UL, and I'm going to put in my container ID with the margin of 0, auto left and right, a background color which is going to give me a light blue with a 0.6 transparency, and a width of 95% of the actual HTML viewport. Then I'm going to set up the slide out class. So right below that, I'm going to come down and address my slide out class. Margin left at 36%. This is actually going to center our images. The position is relative to the container. The width is 300, height is 200. That's the actual dimensions of the images I'm using for this demonstration. So if your images were different sizes, you'd want to adjust that. Overflow is hidden. My margin right is 20 pixels. Border 1 pixel solid dark gray. And a background color, and again, this is going to be the background color for our text, is 0.255, 255, and that's going to have a 0.5 transparency. Let's go ahead and save all those changes. Another good time to pause if you want to get those typed in. I am going to go into the browser and refresh the browser window, and you can start see things are starting to take shape. Right after by the way, the slide out class and container ID, the container ID is what the ID we gave the section, and the slide out class is what I actually gave that UL. That's where I'm actually getting that class and that ID from inside my CSS. Now I want to go address the actual paragraph and the H3 that are inside that slide out class. So I'm going to come in, because they're going to have some styles that are the same for both, so I'm going to go ahead and style those here, where I'm going to give them a color of black, padding of 10 pixels, top, bottom, left, right. Left is 5 pixels, top is 20 pixels, and this is the positioning of them from inside the container itself. So it's 5 from the left, 20 from the top. And again, the position is relative to the parent container. Then I've got some individual styles for my paragraph. So I'm going to come down and put in the individual styles here. I've got a slide out with the paragraph tag. My font family is going to be Arial, Helvetica New, Arial, Helvetica New, Helvetica, and then sans serif. The reason I picked this font family, it's available on about 98% of the Macintoshes and PCs. So it's a very, very popular safe web font. Font size is 12 pixels, plus it's very clean. Line height is 18 pixels, and the margin is 0 all the way around. And then I'm going to set up the H3. And again, I'm going to come right down below that slide out P, and I'm going to do the slide out H3. Again, assign it a font family, font size 20 pixels, line height 24 pixels, and margin 0. I actually could have put this margin 0 inside the common and as well as the font family. I just chose not to. But they are consistent with both, so they could actually be up here. It would save you 2 lines in your CSS file. When you get really large files, that becomes important. I'm going to do a save all. Great time to pause if you want to get all those changes put in. I am going to refresh my browser window. Now things are really starting to take shape. Because now what I want to do is I want to go ahead and add, I'm going to work on my image and actually add the transition. That's coming next. All right, so let's finish up the CSS part. I'm going to go back into that styles.css file. I am going to scroll up a little bit because the first thing I want to do is directly position that image. So I'm going to come right below my slide out H3, and I'm going to address the effect class with an image tag. And if you look back in your HTML document, you'll see we actually have this class in the UL called effect. And I'm addressing this image tag that's inside that class. So I'm saying the position is absolute, margin 0, right 0, top 0. I'm positioning this in the very upper left-hand corner of that container. I'm making my cursor a pointer when it comes over the image, and I'm giving it a transition of top 1 second, ease in, ease out, right 1 second, ease in and ease out. This transition property in CSS has got a lot of cool things associated with it. In fact, I'm using ease in and ease out, but there's actually quite a few properties. Let me open up the web page for the W3C. We actually have ease, linear, ease in out, ease in and out, cubic Bezier, and it explains what each one of these are. I actually use these a lot. I really like this new transition property inside CSS, and I've come to find out that most of the web rendering engines now recognize the property without any web prefixes. Maybe I can get rid of that. Just wanted you to see where I'm getting these. But there's a lot of different transitions that you can actually do with this transition property. Next thing I want to do is I want to address the hover effect, because that's what's actually going to trigger all of this. So I'm going to come right down below where I addressed the effect class, and I'm going to say effect, image with a class of slide, and then when it hovers. So when I hover over, you'll notice that my image has a class of slide. It's all by itself. So I'm getting very specific here. I'm saying with the class of effect, look for an image tag with a class of slide. When I hover over that image, I want to take the top and move it to negative 230. The right goes negative 330. Padding bottom is 200 pixels. Padding left is 300 pixels. And what that's doing, it's actually moving that particular image off. And if you look, this is where we're actually getting these from. I'm telling this top, this is where the top is, right here. My transition says find top. You take 1 second and move it negative 230 pixels. So you're moving it off the screen, off that container. Same thing with the right. So find right, which is right here. It says move minus 330 pixels. So move it minus 330 pixels in 1 second. I want you to ease in and out with that particular effect. Let's go ahead and save all those changes. This is a good time to pause if you need to get those last 2 groups in. I am going to go into our browser, refresh the browser window, and you'll notice now we've got this nice little image with our title. When I hover over it, you'll notice that it eases out of the display and allows me to look at the text. When I move my hover back, it comes back. Let's go ahead and change that to 1/2 a second, because a 1 second's a little bit long. I've actually been playing with these settings as I was writing this. Let's make it 1/2 a second. Save the change. That'll make it transition a little quicker. Refresh our browser window. Yeah, see, now when you go in, it moves out. When you go out, it comes back. So it works really well. What I want to do before I do anything else, I want to go add 2 more images. I am going to copy that entire UL from the HTML document, my start.html. I am going to do a Control-C on the PC, Command-C on the Mac, and I'm going to come down right below my closing tag, and I'm going to paste one in. And I'm going to come right down below my closing tag and paste one in. So now I've got 3 of these images on the screen. The only thing I do want to do is I want to change the image. My first one's going to be Travel 1. This will be Travel 2. And this will be Travel 3. I actually have, I think, 5 images for playing out, because I'm actually going to do a couple other demonstrations with this transition. Let's go ahead and save those changes. Now you'd want to change your titles and your text, and this might be Lookout or Cove Photo, and this one might be Beach Photo. I have no idea what the photos are because I haven't looked at them in a little while. But again, you'd want to change your titles and your text to pertain to that particular picture. Save all those changes, refresh my browser window, and now you'll see we have 3 of these, and we can actually go in now and they all work the same way. The only thing I would want to do is I'd probably want to put a little padding inside my UL. So let's go back into our CSS, go back up to that UL, because I have margin top and bottom 0. Let's say margin top and bottom 10 pixels. Let's save that change, because we know we margin collapse. That'll give us 10 pixels between the images, and now we got a nice little 10 pixel gap between those images with our border. And I mean, it's very nice, it's very responsive. So it's a very cool effect. The transition effect, the things we can do with transition in CSS is very cool. One of the things I did want to show you, if I only want, right now I've got top and right is the way I'm moving this image based on my transition. If I only wanted it to go top, I could actually, or right, I mean, I could actually rem out top, save the change, refresh my browser. Now when I hover it, they only go right, because that's the only one I have there. If I only wanted them to go top, let's rem out the right. Let me toggle this remarks out. That's why one of the reasons I like Sublime Text. Got a lot of shortcut keys. Save those changes. Now the images are going to scroll to the top. Oops. Once I refresh my browser, they're going to scroll to the top. So you have control over how these transition off your page. The reason I'm demonstrating top and right is because that's what I actually set up in my transition. If I wanted these to go bottom and left, I'd actually have to change these settings here, and then change my padding bottom to padding top, padding left to padding right, and you can just play around with those settings to get different effects with your transition. But I think you see what I mean, that this is a very cool feature in CSS3. A lot of fun. You can add a lot of cool things to your site with it. I hope you enjoyed this. I would like you to check out the other tutorials that are available on OnTargetHTML5.com. We've got a lot of good tutorials out there. There's probably about, I don't know, 200 free ones, and there's a couple of really good purchase sets where you can actually learn complete technologies. So I hope to see you on the website. Hope you enjoyed the tutorial. I appreciate any feedback I get. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.